Okay, today I'm going to show some tricks on drawing in Gimp. The goal is to get a drawing of an eye. So, let us use the Bezier Path tool to start with. It's just about one of the few drawing tools you actually have using Gimp the illustration program. Pay attention to the height, which is down in this box that disappears whenever my mouse goes over it. Because you're going to want the eye to line up. So let's see. 118. Doesn't matter what number, just remember what number it is when you go to the other side, which is also 118. And I accidentally left the polygon checkbox on, so let's uncheck the polygon. And try this again. Drawing isn't exactly an exact art, so it doesn't matter if you're off a little bit. Since programming is what I generally do, I like to be a little exact. Okay, that looks close enough for now. You could do the stroke path thing, and that will fill a line where the path is, but its problem is the path ends right there because it doesn't actually join. So it's going to have a little edge if I do that. So instead, I'm going to hit selection from path. And now I'm going to bucket fill it with black. Okay. For the sake of safety, I'm going to create a new layer. Generally keeping transparency on is a good idea. In fact, right click on your background and hit add alpha channel. When you do that, you can do things like take a selection and hit the delete key, and then you'll have transparency. Otherwise, transparency simply won't exist. So I don't need it transparent right now, but it's always good to have on, just because I'm used to it. And this is actually for an icon, so I will need it to be transparent. Okay, so now to draw an eye, or rather the outline of an eye, I obviously don't have any drawing tools except this thing here, which is very difficult to draw a perfect line. So to get around that, let's keep that selected and scale the selection. So just a second. Copy, paste, new layer. There we go. Guess I don't need this layer. Copying and pasting creates a layer. So pasted layer is going to be a different color. Oh yeah. Need to make sure that you select what you're gonna change, and then bucket fill. There we go. Now, to create the outline, this is really simple. Layer. Scale layer, actually. Make it just a little bit smaller. Oops. It wasn't a little bit, was it? So let's say I want it to be about 5 pixels. No, a little farther. There we go. You can kind of see the outline of an eye there. So let's change this color to white. Oops. Notice that it wasn't a perfect selection. There is still red. So let's go all the way back. Select the whole layer. There's a fuzzy edge, so there's a way around these fuzzy edges. Click the solid color on the outside. Select, invert. There. Now you can bucket fill. Okay. Bucket fill wasn't working. Luckily, if the bucket fill doesn't work, use the gradient tool and make sure background and foreground are the same color, and that's a way around when the bucket tool is not working. There's a reason for it, I just forgot why it's not working. Now I can scale the layer. And we should have a nice outline to an eye. Alright, there we go. Now the other parts of the eye are pretty simple. So you're going to need an eyelash at some point. And just for this, let's create a new layer. Oops, that was delete. Didn't need delete. Okay, eyelash. I turned this into a new layer because I'm going to have to do some rotations, and I don't want the rotation to get in the way of the other parts of the layer. So just make it a semi-solid color and use the rotation tool. Skew tool might actually work, or shear. Okay. How's that for an eyelash? Actually, it's like I'm accidentally moving the entire layer with it. That doesn't matter too much. Control X, Control V, new layer. There we are. Copying and pasting creates a new layer that's the same size as your selection. Comes in really handy. Now, if I paste a few more times, oops, looks like I'll have to copy and paste it. Okay, color doesn't show up until you create a new layer from it directly. Right click, new layer. And I'm not going to make this perfect because it's for a tutorial. I'll make it perfect later for the reason why I'm making this. So that should be enough for now. The basics are set up. Now let's use the skew tool. And I had the wrong one selected. So, sure. Okay. Select. Which one was it? Okay. Looks like I'm clicking on different ones, and different ones are getting highlighted. So, pay attention to which one gets highlighted. Back to the skew tool, and skew. Okay. Well, it's called shear, but what it does doesn't seem to be shearing. That's the middle one, don't need to edit it. Already edited that one. On the left, wrong tool. Skew. And if you don't want to skew, there's always the rotation tool. You can always use whichever one looks more realistic for your purposes. I'm going to stay consistent just for the sake of the image. Now the easy part, at least up until making the internal graphics, would be the pupil. I bet you can guess. I'm going to make a selection within a new layer. It doesn't matter where that layer is as long as it's above the white layer here. So, select, move it a little more towards realistic size, and don't worry about these dots. They're just rendering artifacts. They don't actually affect the image. Since the bucket fill tool is a little annoying, doesn't always work, I'll just use the gradient. Perfect. Now, new layer. Make sure it's below that layer, which it is. And you can color the iris whatever color you want. Black and white is all I need for what I'm doing, so I actually don't have to do that. That's the basics of creating an eye. To make the image on the inside and do the details, you might actually want to use pencil tool. Make it really small. I can barely see how big that actually is, so let's zoom in. Okay, so when you do have the iris, notice how it's only selected in this area, even though the layer that's selected is not the pupil layer. So hit Control A, and now your canvas suddenly becomes as big as the actual image. You can make a safety for you. Oops. You can make a safety for yourself and actually trying to choose a selected area, and then only draw within that area. See how I cannot draw on the outside, no matter how much I wiggle around the mouse. Okay, and also notice when I drew, or rather filled that circle, you have soft edges. When you're cleaning the images, this gets really annoying. So the settings on this side actually determine how hard those edges are. And there are two ways to fix it. You can use this color select tool, and be careful about very similar colors. But if you select black, it'll select all the black. If you select gray, it should select all the gray. It looks like it has a tolerance that's getting annoying. So change the threshold. And is it up or down? Yeah, it looks like that's not working. Okay, with more varying colors, that usually comes in really handy. Otherwise, you get to manually select and hit the delete key for every single pixel. And make sure you're on the right layer. But anyway, that's the basics of drawing an eye. Pay attention to your selection, and let's see, feel free to use filters and play with all the filters, and you can get really different effects. I don't need to do it here because, once again, I don't need colors. But that's the basics of drawing in Gimp. Okay.